Welcome back.
Hey, everybody.
Season 2 underway. And we got a very, very, very special guest in the house today, Mr. Steve Mo.
Oh, wait, I thought you were talking about me. All right, Steve.
Oh, no, Ted. Look, for those of you who have been watching the podcast all season 1, Ted actually referenced Steve on the very first episode and talked about his great contribution to Salesforce and the Salesforce community. I think you may hold the record for most, how would you say, most answered inquiries on the Salesforce forum?
Or most beers owed. One of the
two. Or just oldest Salesforce admin on the Answers community. That's another way of putting it. I just been, I joke around there's a ton of people in the Answers community that are awesome. Like this guy Deepak Anand, who, in my opinion, he's like the greatest. And I was like, Deepak is he's like LeBron. He's like Steph Curry. I'm like Ray Allen in that 2014, 2015 Miami Heat. When
with the Spurs.
I had accumulated all these stats, but they were just Ray, okay, Ray, don't try to run up and down the court. Just stay here. We'll feed you the ball, and you just shoot threes. That's
Guess what?
I'm just old.
Would not have that championship if it wasn't for Ray Allen corner 3-point shot. Guaranteed.
I'll take that.
So look, no championships are won without Steve Mo. So Steve, tell us a little something about yourself.
That's a loaded question. People talk about the Answers community and the answers and formulas and stuff like that. But I was telling Ted earlier, I lucked into this in a lot of ways. I was working about the same company 29 years, and back in 2003, I was in a team meeting. I was a Lotus Domino developer, same company I'm with now. And my boss pointed at me and said, sales is getting this thing called Salesforce. You can take it. It's going to be about 25 users, password resets, basic setup and config. You can take it. And it's just like my little work side gig. I mean, 90% of my time was Lotus Domino development, stuff like that. And as luck would have it, little did I know that Lotus Domino gave me this great leg up on Salesforce because it was a relational database, so the architecture was the same. But unbeknownst to me, Salesforce had a formula language that was 99% identical to Lotus Domino formula language.
Yeah,
I was telling Ted, if I dusted off one of my old Lotus Domino databases, I could copy and paste half my formulas into Salesforce, and they'd pass a syntax check. So, I didn't pop out of the womb writing Salesforce formulas. When I became a Salesforce admin, I had unknowingly written thousands of formulas in Lotus that would work in Salesforce. So when I had to write a Salesforce formula, the structure, the syntax, the functions, everything was the same. So it was there was no learning curve for me. But I was just lucky. I was just, I fell out of the lucky tree and hit every branch on the way down.
We can see
before that. Before Lotus Domino, it's been with the same company. When I first started at Epsilon, we had our own homegrown system called the X system. And, nobody who worked outside of Epsilon had any exposure to the X system. They put you in a boot camp class for a week to learn the X system and the syntax and logic. And that kind of gave me a foundation in how to structure a query or a filter or all these little things that I didn't know at the time were going to play a role down the road.
It reminds me of Jay. It reminds me of you, Jay, and how we first started talking in your developer background and how and just kind of being new to Salesforce, and how I think that in a lot of ways gives you a leg up. And there's a lot of things that you've been looking at in the admin trailheads and so forth that are coming really easier to you. And I think that's because your background is just, it's kind of like Steve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Steve, you were telling your story. I was like, man, you sure this guy's name isn't Jay? Because I found myself in a similar scenario without the opportunity to actually jump into Salesforce. I started off developing, and one of the you call it languages or not, one of the RDBMSs we would use was the Oracle. So I was very proficient in Oracle SQL, and PL SQL. So and understanding the concepts and principles of how relational databases work. So when I got into Salesforce and I started running through some of the trailheads, I was like, wait a minute, this is stuff I know. I know
that,
this, you know?
And that right there gives you such an advantage or a foundation to build on. Because for some people who don't have that exposure or background, what seems simple or basic to us, how a relational the pieces of a relational database relate to one another.
Yeah.
There's a learning curve there for some people, and it can be really hard. And I don't fault them for that, because it can be, you go into Salesforce and open up the schema builder and do select all and look at where all those tendrils go. That could be daunting. But when you get in, when you have poked around for a while, then you understand the relationship between, like, look at one of the most, I don't want to say complex, but one of the ones that's the most pervasive, like account to opportunity product, and then you've got the price book, and you've got the price book entry, and you've got the core product, all those little things and how they play into one another. And that informs so many things, like how you're going to build a flow that, okay, someone adds a line item and they check a checkbox on this line item. I need to make that thing trigger this. How do I do it? Am I going to start with a record triggered flow on that line item record? Or do I need to do something else where I do a get records and find those, go through that stack of line items and find those ones with that checkbox? I think like one of the must-take Trailhead modules, and there's so many great modules, but
there you go.
One was the data modeling one is essential. Like, I don't care what you want, what role what path you're on in Trailhead, BSA, admin, architect, developer, what data model. That's like, you got to know the data model.
So and just based on that, it sounds like if you're someone new that's looking to get into Salesforce, doesn't have a whole lot of programming background knowledge or database knowledge, then the first gold nugget from Mr. Steve Mo is to Trailhead, the data modeler Trailhead.
Yeah. Know your data, know your object relationships. And like, and I was looking the other day, like I mean, talk about being old. When Salesforce first came out with dev orgs, I got one as soon as they became a thing. And I got a dev org that's like 19 years old, 18 years old. I mean, it's so old that there are features I can't turn on in it because it's like a software that, like, you know how like sometimes it's like if you don't do updates on a regular basis, and then you find yourself, it's like, oh crap, I gotta update to this new version, and it finds out like, no, you actually cannot install that version on this one. You gotta like you gotta do like a like it used to be a thing with the Outlook plugin. Remember when the Outlook plugin used to run on your desktop? It was like a little, like there used to be this thing where it's like, if you didn't keep that thing up to date and you let it lapse, and it came out with like version 4.2 and you were on version 3.6, it'd be like, no.
You got to run through all of them.
You can't install 4.2 and 3.6. You got to delete the whole thing and start fresh. and then oh man, that what a mess that guy. Cause I used to have to do that with some users and like coach them through it. And then like the like, well, you actually can't delete the whole thing though. You gotta go into your Windows registry and clean all these settings out, or there'll be this lingering crap from 3.6 in there that's gonna. Oh,
yeah. So 19 years old. Woo,
so I guess
that's older than no. I was about to say that's older than some of my siblings, but some of them made the cut just by this much. Yeah. So, but look, that was interesting. I got a good one for you though. I know we're just kind of talking about. I got a good one. So you talked about the 19-year-old org that a dev org that you had. So I'm gonna shift gears. So what's the craziest Salesforce implementation or project that you've ever been a part of? I mean, just crazy. It was just all over the place.
Oh man, I had to build something in my own org. I remember I was at Dreamforce 18 or 19 hanging out with some people, and it was a mix of admins, developers, people from shops and consultant side and all that stuff.
Yeah, the crew.
And we're just hanging out in like the hotel bar, just talking stuff. And when I told them the requirements that I was giving, this one dude lost his shit and just kind of like he was laughing out loud at the requirements that had been dropped on me. I had to build an approval process, and I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of dealing with a Salesforce approval process. The setup and configuration on approval processes is just a nightmare.
Don't say that, Steve. Don't say that, because I just kicked off and got into the approval process part of my learning.
Did you really?
Now,
I just done a few the other day. So.
But is it old school approval processes or like CPQ approval processes?
No, this new stuff. So I may be okay.
The old school approval processes. I mean, like, and it wasn't like just the approval; it was the requirements that I was given, because like they fell in love with the fact that from an approval with an approval process, the only place in Salesforce that this happens right out of the box, you can have the approval process email the approvers.
Yep.
And they can reply to that email with the word approved or rejected in the email reply. Salesforce will receive that reply and process that as an actual approval or rejection. It actually processes the email and updates the record status to approved or rejected. The only place in the entire Salesforce universe where this happens. I've even asked the people from Salesforce, like, how does this happen, and why can't you bundle this feature up and make it a flow action, like whatever you want to call it? Email approval, or approval via receipt, or approval via reply. Why can't, it's very deep in there. And my users fell in love with it, and they did not want to give it up. So they kept on adding on to the complexity of the routing, because it was like, oh, well, depending on the product bundle that makes up this deal, each of the product managers also needs to be able to has to sign off on the deal. But the bundle could be any combination of products. So I had to come up with this, and they were also adamant, we only want the people who need to approve the thing to get the email. We don't want the email to go to everybody in the approval thing and just have people ignore it if it doesn't apply to them. We only want the thing to be routed to the actual people who need to approve it. And so to make all this magic happen, I had to I got an Excel spreadsheet, and I mapped out all the possible permutations of product bundles and potential approvers and I built an approval step for every possible permutation.
So you got a little bit of scientist in you.
Until I
That's
realized that one of the limitations of approval processes is that a single approval process can only have 30 steps. So when I hit the limit for the number of steps, I had to create another approval process to handle the overflow. And when I maxed that one out, I had to create another approval, and I had to daisy chain these things together and make them all mutually exclusive, so that by accident a deal didn't get like routed twice. And I got this Excel spreadsheet of every possible checkbox checked.
So I got an idea that Ted and I are probably thinking the same thing though. So you go through, you map out all these permutations on the Excel spreadsheet, you daisy chain kind of the approval process. So what happens when one of those approvers leaves the company?
So this was one of my first little like flow wins. This was one of my first like flow wins. So on my opportunity object, I created this hidden array of lookup user fields, because at the end of the day, there is a maximum of 12 people who may need to sign off on a deal. I mean, some of them, it's based on the overall value or margin of the thing. It might need the president's approval, might need the SVP of finance's approval, might need the account manager's approval. But then you got all these PMs who are only involved if the deal involves their products. And that's the wild card, because that's the thing that's always moving. Like the other ones, it's all like, opportunity amount more than 5 million goes to this person. Wow. Opportunity amount, 2 million to 5 million goes to these people.
Right.
Those things are pretty static. But so this was one of my first flows that I was really proud of. I created a custom object called approvers, and it's just one form, and it just has every single user who is an approver and what their role is. Product manager for this product, that product, the other product, SVP of finance, VP of finance, director of finance, whatever.
Yeah.
And I wrote a flow. And so every time an opportunity is created or it's updated, it kicks off a flow that goes out and fetches who the current approvers are in each of those roles. And so this dude went on sabbatical, and I told the people from our pricing team, I said, that's right, go into this form and go into Salesforce, pull up the approver template, swap out Kevin with whoever's taking Kevin's place while Kevin's on sabbatical. And they just updated who they replaced Kevin with this other user. Anytime any open opportunity got edited, and if it's closed, it's not going to go through the approval process because it's already done. But anytime somebody created a new opportunity or edited an open opportunity, it fetched who the current approvers are.
Okay, cool.
And so I did it with a flow.
I see that. I know that look.
I was just the thing I like the most about that is how you've built something that empowers your users to edit it and change on their own, instead of having to ask an admin to add a new approver or something like that. You've thought this through so much, not only to do the 3 different ones in the daisy chain and stitch it all together, but then their experience is that they can control it and that they don't feel like out of the loop, and it doesn't give you an extra thing coming into your email box also. So.
But if I'd really thought it through, I would have told them it couldn't be done, and they just had
I wasn't gonna go there. I was thinking of that avenue. Because I was playing off of what Jay said. I was thinking, what if you leave?
Yeah.
then what do you do? You kind of answered that with a form. Yeah. So,
but look, if they had taken a data mile trailhead, and keep me honest here, one of the things that they could have done rather than that form, if Steve gave them the spreadsheet, they could have done it. Yep. But of course, that would have been manual. We want to kind of shift towards automation, but that was another one. So take the data mile trailhead.
Yeah, I love that.
So that was a heavy one. That was a good one.
That was oof, that one left a mark. That was
lighten us up. What's next?
But that reminded me of one. I'm gonna throw this out. I may have mentioned this before. I had a project where I had to pretty much code for a similar situation to where within the database, and we was working off a Unix system. So I created a Perl script that would actually automate sending out the emails, fetch back in the response, update the database, and then flow the record through. In testing, this is why it is important not to do updates directly in production. Okay. Never test in production. To all my newly coming in developers, never test in production. Even when they say it's okay to test in production, never test in production. That's last step. Make sure you got your solid test, a dev environment, and go with that. I created that thing. And rather than sending an email to a single person, just pulling it out, querying out the single person, it pulled the entire email list. So,
of course it did.
One morning, I'm sitting at my desk. I got this thing going. I'm sitting on my high horse. I got my hands back like, knock this one out. I get a boatload of emails. When I say a boatload of emails, and they all say the same thing. I'm like, oh my goodness. Hopefully, it is just me. So my manager slowly strolls over there, just puts his hand on the side of my cube and does this like, so how's that script working out? Like, he's like, look, you don't have to tell me because I just got an email from our VP of IT asking why does he now have 5,000 emails in his inbox. Now, I wasn't working with customer data, luckily, but it was internal email addresses. So you can imagine folks were kind of mad at me for a while.
I feel you. I did something like that, and as like, you know, as a like, I always, you know, worry about like something breaking or something like. So I always make sure that I'm also CC'd as the recipient. And I had one like that, and I could see like I'm getting CC'd on every one of them. So like my inbox is filling up. And like we're like, you know, somebody called me or emailed me like, "Hey, what's up? This is like the 15th of these I've gotten this morning," and I was like, "If it makes you feel any better,
I got them too.
I'm getting CC'd on every one of them, every one of them. I got CC'd on your 15." And I got CC'd on Joe's 22, and I got CC'd on Mary's 36, and I got CC'd on Barbara's 57.
So look, now I don't feel this bad. I thought it was a me thing, but now it's a us thing. We have a bond. We have a bond. These are email brothers. But to Ted's point, we can lighten it up a bit.
That's that. It's like, and it does answer the question. Why does a sandbox default every user's email address to invalid? Now we know.
Right. So, on more of a lighter note, I guess. So, Salesforce is worldwide known name. Mm-hmm. But if someone walked up to you, Steve, and said, "Hey, we want to rename Salesforce," what would you name it? Hold on, before you answer, Steve, I'm gonna give you a little bit of time. Since you're the guest, I'm gonna give you a little bit of time to think about that. Ted, what would you rename Salesforce to? Yes, I'm asking you. I want to know. You got some time in the ecosystem based on what you know, the functionality that's offered, all those things, the coolness of Salesforce. If that went away, what would you name it?
You know, I don't know. I do think the word sales being like sales forward is too small for Salesforce these days. Like, it's so big and there's so much out there. It's kind of like the omniverse or something like that now. Man, I don't know. Maybe I'd call it just something like Lego, because you can like do anything with it now. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the block people wouldn't approve of that name, Ted. You probably find yourself in court day one.
Probably not. Probably not.
I remember a while ago, showing how old I am. For a hot minute, back in, I don't know, 2012-ish to 15-ish, there was a rumor that they were at least exploring the idea of dropping the sales.
Oh yeah,
because it started as a sales CRM, but it had evolved already to so much more.
Yeah.
That they were, but then like people were like, told the cautionary tale of, I got two words for you: new Coke. Like, don't make that mistake.
Right.
I think if they had to, though, if they absolutely had to drop the sales, I think probably something like cloud would have to be in there somehow, because it is mostly about the cloud and the cloud technology. So maybe CloudForce or something like that.
But I don't want them to, because at this point, everybody in my family thinks that not only do I work at Salesforce, but I pretty much invented it. So the fact that I did not invent it, I've never worked for Salesforce.
Yeah,
like, I don't know, it would just confuse my family too much.
So I gotta ask like both of you, what's your Thanksgiving? I don't work for Salesforce script with the because because that's what, like, there's no dodging the Salesforce question at a holiday gathering, and so I was like, okay, so what kind of car do you drive? A Toyota, okay? You don't work for Toyota, do you? Right. Neither do I. Yeah. I don't work for Salesforce. My company uses Salesforce. I happen to be the Salesforce mechanic.
Steve, 2 weeks ago, my dear aunt in Kentucky, I love her dearly, she texted me and asked me, is now a good time to invest in Salesforce? And I'm just like, I don't know.
I wish I had all those years ago. I wish when I had that first Salesforce aha moment back in 2004, 2000, whatever. Like, I should have, because I did have that, like, this, I think was good. You have that moment where it's like, this is something. It's like, it almost was like, it feels like they, like, I remember like working, so I was still very much had like one foot in Lotus Domino at the time, but it was like I was doing something in Salesforce, just like, it feels like they took this and that and this other thing and this other system I worked on and that other system, and they figured it all out and they put it in the cloud. Whatever this cloud thing is, like, I'm still trying to figure out what the cloud was at that point. Like, I was like, they solved this problem, they solved this problem, they solved that problem, and I forget when it was, but I had that moment where just like it hit me. Like, I think for a lot of people, they're in setup and config and they do something, and it just
for me, I was like, I'm like, I'm not a techie guy, and I'm like, I think I understand what like multi-tenant architecture means. If they can explain that to me and I get it, like, they're onto something, you know, like. But Jay, like, you're the newest to the Salesforce world. Have you even had that moment? I know your wife, Lakeisha, she has a job in the industry, so to speak, in the Salesforce world. Has she had that moment? Have you guys talked about that?
So for me, I'm gonna jump back to Steve's question about the Thanksgiving thing, right? And Ted, you kind of answered it. They say, so you work for Salesforce? I just say, ask my wife. Just ask my wife. I work for whoever she says I work for. You go ask her.
Hey, that was a lot of fun. Thank you, Steve, so much for being on the podcast. That was just episode 1 of Steve Mo. We're going to end it right there, but we're going to give you a second helping of Steve Mo in the future when we come back and finish the conversation with the great Steve Mo.